Good morning, YouTube. Salty Texas back with another project. This is one of my longest videos I've ever done. So what are we doing today? We are taking this scrap wood that I found on the side of my house. I've literally had this in my garage for, I would say, almost well over a year. So mowing the grass outside in the backyard or the side of the yard, and had this nice little piece of wood here. Had this, it's just a chunk of God knows what this wood actually is. And I've been meaning to use it in a project and finally decided, you know what, I'm gonna do something different, because I've been doing these scrap wood bowls, which I love and in my opinion are all completely different because every project is a little different. And decided, you know what, let's give the viewers a little something different in today's project. So here we are, cutting it down on the bandsaw here, just trying to get a feel for, you know, the particular pieces that we're using and trying to make everything fit into the bowl. So realized that things were a little too big, broke out my Ryobi sander and I'm just edging everything off. So there's still a lot of dirt on these pieces of wood. And what I discovered once I hit the sander, some pieces were a little bit harder than others, and some of the edges on some of these sides were literally falling apart on the sander and disintegrating, while others were a little bit more difficult to get through. And you can see all the dust and the dirt there on the sander itself. And we're just getting everything nice and leveled out before we actually glue it down. So once we got all of that complete, got an idea for how things are going to fit in the bowl. Everything's lining up real nice and neat, as you can see here. I'm pretty happy with everything as far as this is going at this point. And FYI, for the future, I definitely needed to clean this wood before I actually put the epoxy in, because you can see the dirt, the grime, and everything that's on the bowl itself, which kind of is going to become a problem later on. So here we are doing the epoxy pour. Zoomed in, using East Coast resin on this project. Always using the East Coast resin because it's one of the cheaper resins and it's really good. So if you're on a budget, East Coast resin, definitely suggest that. You can get that on Amazon. Not sponsored, by the way, but hey, East Coast resin, if you're listening, I'll definitely take a sponsorship. So here we are, 4.5 hours in the pressure pot. Got everything nice and neat, and immediately when I took it out of the mold, I see the dreaded bubbles, and there is some, you can see some splinting. I don't even know what to call that. It's like when the epoxy kind of gets embedded into the wood and then makes these like weird textures inside of the epoxy. And I'm going, okay, I've seen this before. If you go back and watch my pine cone video, you definitely know that that did not end up well. So I'm going, okay, let's go ahead and try this. Let's give it a shot. So got the face plate on there. We're just going ahead, screw that all on. I absolutely hate when it spins like that, by the way. There's some future projects that are coming up that that kind of really irritates me. But here we are, screwing everything in. Got the face plate on, not a problem. So putting it on the lathe, using our little Nova MIDI lathe here. Everything's going relatively well up to this point. And here we go. Already falling apart on me on that side. So here we go, about to start it off, and immediately getting a lot of vibration on the lathe, and I'm going, oh my god, we are not going off to a good start. And you can see, if you go back and rewind the tape, when I spun it with my hand, you could see how uneven it was. And here I am kind of freaking out, going, oh, this is not a good way to start stuff. So obviously a lot of dancing, a lot of manipulation, a lot of movement on the workbench itself, but I'm trying my best to hurry up and get everything nice and even, because that's what's causing all that wobble, is all the manipulation and the movement of the lathe and how uneven the blink is attached to the headstock there. So going through, getting everything nice and even, having a lot of success initially, and then coming back with the round carbide tool, and again, we're getting good ribbons. You can see all the ones that are hitting me in the face and in the chest, and I'm getting everything off the lathe as best I can, and everything up into this point is going relatively well. By the way, I did this project back in May sometime, I think, of 2021. You guys probably aren't going to watch this until like August or September, maybe even October, I don't know, but I'm getting a little bit of chip out, which I totally expected to get, and I was like, okay, something is wrong with the epoxy. That's immediately what I go to when I get chip out like that. And when I showed you the beginning of the bowl blank itself, you saw all those little spots that were in there. There were some gaps. So I'm going, okay, we're just gonna play through, because regardless if this ends up being a successful project or not, I'm all about, you know, showing everything that I do on this channel, because, you know, mistakes are made and that's how we learn. So decided to come back, hitting it with a round carbide tool, try to get that nice bottom nice and even before we start to dig out the mortise on the bottom of it. And up until this point, everything's going okay. Most of the majority of the bowl is still well put together, and I apologize, I still can't figure out why my camera zooms in for no reason. But hey, this is kind of cool, because now you can see me zoomed in, hitting it with that flat skew, trying to get everything nice and even. And for these upcoming projects that I have on the channel, I really rely on that flat skew a lot. And you can see here, I'm thinking this is just, it's already a disaster. So here we are on the bottom. Once I've, you know, tried to flatten everything out, the wood portion of it is coming out. You can see all the gaps in the wood. Not all the epoxy got in there, and I'm at this point not hopeful for, you know, a good resolution of making a mortise. So here we are trying to make everything nice and even. Here I am adjusting the banjo, trying to make everything to the appropriate height, and immediately I'm thinking this is going to just explode on me, or I'm going to puncture through and I'm just going to make a mess everywhere and it's just going to look like absolute garbage. But, you know, we're just taking small gentle strokes, trying to make that initial cavernous divot there so we can start hitting it with a round carbide tool. And I'm having to go back and adjust the banjo a couple of times because of the height, and then that happens. So it flew off the lathe in classic Salty Texas fashion. If you've been watching the channel for any amount of time, you know my number one thing that I do is things fly off the lathe, and that one totally blew up in my face. So I'm going, okay, we're gonna go ahead and reset it. Maybe I didn't put enough glue on there the first time. So went back, hit it with the hot glue. You can see my fingers actually injured in this video. Ended up slicing my finger open with one of the flat chisels. So got everything reattached, glued up, got the faceplate on, and of course, once you manipulate or move the faceplate, the center is off yet again. So what happens is you have to go back, reattach everything, and make everything even again, because again, you can see right here, everything is kind of just wobbly. And I'm at that point super frustrated. So you saw me there digging into the epoxy itself, because I'm absolutely frustrated with this project up until this point, and I'm going, this is just a complete waste. I'm wasting my time. The epoxy is absolutely screwed. There's no way I'm going to salvage this, but we're playing through, so that's why. So again, I say this in a couple of my videos, if you're frustrated and you're working with a lathe, that is a horrible combination, because you're more likely to get injured. But here I am, a prime example of what not to do. So again, basically doing the same thing, coming back, hitting it with a round carbide tool, still getting a lot of dancing, and by this time you can see all of this chip out that's there, and I'm going, okay, I've tried everything, let's hit it with a flat skew again and see if that makes any kind of a difference. And luckily it did in a couple of places. So at this point, I'm just trying to salvage as much as possible, taking the square carbide and, you know, trying to get that bottom nice and even, because I need some semblance of just evenness before I can even move on with anything else that I'm trying to do with this project. So coming back and forth, round carbide, square carbide, dancing all over the lathe, all over the workbench, and just I'm at this point I'm just super frustrated. I'll be happy to get anything out of it, is what I'm thinking. So once we get everything nice and even, we're just coming back, hitting it with the edges, trying to get it, you know, some semblance of that. So remove the tailstock, and now I'm just taking the square, and I built a little bit of a tan-in once I was working down a lot of the material, trying to get everything somewhat even on the bottom so I can try again to make a mortise. And once we did that, now you can see the wood protruding out a little bit, and you saw there, you know, we got a lot of that chip out done. So this is round 2 for trying to make a mortise. So here we are, gouging everything out, doing everything basically the same way we did the previous time, which is to make everything nice and even, take small gentle strokes, Don't do anything too invasive. Don't dig at it. Don't get frustrated, which I am horrible at not getting frustrated because I get frustrated all the time. So here we are, got a little bit of a mortise going, feeling pretty good about it, and it happens again. So at this point, I'm really debating, I don't know what the problem is. So I had to go grab a beer for this one. So I think what happened the second time when I attached that waste block was the fact that I didn't have it absolutely even on the top. So that belt sander, I ended up, or the round disc sander, I ended up flattening everything out on that. So I put a copious amount of glue on this one this time. Everything is nice, flat, and even. And we are going again for the third time, trying to make everything as even as possible. And the second time around, it went a little bit easier because everything was relatively the same shape I wanted it. I used enough super glue to glue up like 4 projects with the amount of hot glue that I used. So this is the third attempt at attempting to get everything nice and even, and we're just getting a lot of material worked off. At this point, I'm surprised that I'm still in the project. So once we got this taken care of, just like I did in the same, the couple of the other, the first 2 times, getting everything as nice and even as possible, trying to make as much room as possible, trying to avoid chip out and large shards of glass hitting me in the face. So then again, we take the round carbide tool, we're just making everything nice and even on the bottom before we try our third attempt at making a mortise. And I'm just hoping, like, okay, we got to stop this. Use super glue. I know what else to do. I'm just frustrated at this point. But the show must go on. So here we are, getting everything nice and even. You can see that tailstock moving. I'm just, resting the tool on top, trying to make everything nice and even. And I mean, the mortise is practically done by this point, but it wasn't large enough to where I could reverse it in the chuck. So that's essentially why I had to go back and do it again. So here we are, digging out the mortise, trying to pray to God that it doesn't fly off. And I end up stopping the lathe. I'm going, okay, I just needed a slight bigger opening and taking real nice gentle strokes. Third time's a charm, getting in there, getting everything nice and even. And I'm like, okay, thank God, hallelujah, it fits. So once we completed that, then I had issues trying to get the screws out and the faceplate off, because the previous 2 times it just flew off the lathe, so it made my job a lot easier. So getting everything nice, get the faceplate off, and then doing my favorite part, which is getting this waste block off with the chisel, as we're doing here. A little zoom in action. And then I got a new ring light. That's why the light keeps on flicking on and off. But got this off, and I'm kind of going, okay, let's get the lip done. Let's get, the nice round edges the way we like, and then we can start to gouge this damn bowl out. So reversed on the chuck, obviously the mortise is holding up okay, and now we're just getting the lip of that bowl taken care of using the round carbide tool, initially hitting it with a bowl gouge, trying to get everything nice and even. Again, resting the tool on top, making sure everything is nice and flush so that we don't get any more major problems here. And we're getting webbing all over the camera at this point. I think this project literally took me a week. From the time the epoxy had set up to the time I started actually trying to make a bowl, it took about a week to get done because there were so many problems with it. And I would just come home from work on it, and it would just screw up so bad. So here we are, got some semblance of a bowl, and I'm pretty excited. I'm like, okay, well, let's rock and roll. Let's, try to gouge this thing out. And I was surprised that, this part didn't really take a long time. I really didn't have any real big issues as compared to the 3 attempts to make a mortise and how many times that failed. But this part went, from my memory, relatively easy because I literally haven't done the commentary on this video in a month since I finished it. So I don't know. I might get surprised and, it might fly off the lathe. I think it actually does fly off the lathe if I'm not mistaken. But here we are, and you can see that I'm getting some, initial good gouging out, really good. You can see my lathe practically moving all over, and I'm pretty sure I come danger close to the lathe actually almost falling off the workbench. You can see there on the bottom left-hand corner of the edge there of how close I am to actually having the lathe fall off, which would have just been horrible and catastrophic. So once we got to the depth we pretty much wanted, then I just took a lot of time with the round carbide tool, stayed away from the actual chisel, the bowl gouge itself, came back, did a lot of work with the square and round carbide tools, had a lot more success with that in terms of getting material off to where I didn't have to worry about chip out or chatter, as sometimes it's called. So here we are, just coming back and forth, rounding out that side edge there, and you can't really see, but I'm getting a lot of spray of just like small shards of glass, and that's pretty much what it was. Didn't have any good ribbon formation toward the bottom of this. I'm getting a lot of just glass. I mean, there you can see the ribbons shooting out, but overall it was just mostly just like a fine dusting that I got. And here we are finishing up the bottom of the bowl. At this point, I'm super surprised, and I'm like, okay, I think we're good. I'm gonna call that good. So then zoom in, hitting it with sanding. I'm thinking, okay, sanding is not my favorite part, but at least it's almost done. So we go from 340 all the way up to 1500, and then come back and hit it with the micro mesh. Here I am sanding, zooming in and out. Not a good camera technique. And here we are doing the wet sanding, which I don't really mind wet sanding. That's actually not too bad. So here we are, didn't add any dyes to it. Really wanted the color of the wood to pop out. And you know what? When it was all said and done, it turned out a lot better. We managed to salvage the project. Not the best thing that I've ever created. I want to do some natural wood projects in the future once I get a kind of a bigger lathe. But you know what? Overall, should have cleaned up the wood a little bit better. It's probably the moisture in the wood that caused a lot of these problems. But overall, there it is, all nice, done, and neat. Sorry for the speckles. There's actually wood chips in the camera lens itself. But here we are, all nice, completed. Kind of looks cool a little bit, but kind of not really. I like the outer edges of it a little bit more than I do the inner portions of it. Hopefully the next time we do this, it goes a little bit more smooth. So hope you liked the video. Hope you didn't mind my commentary. Don't forget to subscribe. Trying to get to 1,000 subs by the end of the year, and I'll see you in the next project. Peace. Okay, so project is done. Here we go. For all of the fucking problems that it gave me, it actually turned out quite beautiful. It's not a complete loss. I almost threw this entire blank away. I'm sure I went over in the commentary all the fucking problems I had, but wow, it really looks really good. So I'm kind of glad I stuck with it, but fuck, it gave me so many problems, man. And I'm glad I stuck with it. Older woodworking me would have been like, fuck it, just not worth it. But we managed to salve it. It's not the prettiest, it's not the best. Like I went over in the commentary, I'm sure it was the mixture of multiple resins and probably moisture in the wood that hadn't dried out. But man, it looks really good. It really does. I'm really happy the way that it turned out. So today is April 24th, 2021. You guys are probably not watching this until September sometime, but hope everybody's doing well. And remember, stick with shit even when it doesn't fucking work out, because man, it really looks good. Not the best. It obviously has flaws and chips, but it turned out better than I thought. So hope you liked it. Don't forget to subscribe. Trying to get to 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. And I'll see you guys in the next project. All right. Peace.